Welcome back to the Blister and Muck podcast. I'm Jenny Mason, your host and the creator of the Blister and Muck series. We're a fraction of the way through the final season. Halfway to be exact. I suppose we have to finish. With only 10 more episodes leading to the thrilling conclusion of Blister and Muck's saga, I feel as though this season is going by too fast. It's so fast, it doesn't have velocity. It has velociraptor, and I can prove it. Simply divide its raptor time by its raptor distance. Naturally, I want to use a bit of math humor to arithmetical your funny bone, because what's happening on this show is pretty tragic. When we left off, Blister's many errors finally added up to no good. Seltzer and Horchata washed their wings of him. Rip buried all ties of Blister in the litter box. Spindle wove one last goodbye before he hit the road. And Muck, well, let's just say he and Blister are no longer a math made in heaven. I wish I could tell you that this unsolved equation balances out in the end, but I can't. I don't have the math skills to do so. I mean, sure, I'll do algebra. I'll dabble in trigonometry. I'll probably try statistics. But graphing is where I draw the line. And as it stands, the numbers just don't look good for poor old Blister. He's not a rat, he's a math book full of problems. I wonder if he's been cursed. Could he get out of this predicament using a hexagon? I suggest we don't get bogged down with the negatives, especially if we're willing to stop at nothing to avoid them. For instance, what if I told you that after destroying his friendships and bell tower home, Blister finally abandons the one-for-one and none-for-all credo? I guess you could say he adopts a whole new attitude. I won't give away all the results, but in sum, Blister sets off to see some new places. He's hoping to make some new friends. This time, he's really going to make something of himself. Unfortunately, in the midst of so many math puns, any and all plans can be easily foiled. Episode 10. A Split-Flap Epiphany. The night mists blushed brothy orange at dawn. As day tried to pour itself into the world, gray clouds spread across the sky, leaving no openings for the sun's broth. Blister watched these meteorological transformations from his concealed perch inside the train station. He looked away only when the giant split-flap board clicked to life. Mechanized gears spun flaps of wood painted with the names of cities, towns, and villages. Beside those, smaller gears spun smaller slats painted with numbers. The flaps spun like miniature paddle wheels on steamships. One by one, the many gears stopped until there were 2 alphabetical place lists. The list on the left displayed where all the arriving trains were coming from, while the list on the right displayed the places where all the departing trains would travel to. The numbers beside each location arranged themselves into arrival and departure times. Other flaps revealed whether those trains were on time or delayed. Blister skimmed the list of departures from Anchor Ridge to Crudwell, Glut Warren to No Man's Land, Puddleton to upper crust. There was literally nowhere he wanted to go. His selection of a new home was not helped by the fact he'd been nowhere else besides Black Rust and Wisteria Falls. The big, licorice-colored engines chuffed in and out of the station. The split flaps shuffled up new names and new times. By midday, the smoldering ash at the pit of Blister's stomach crackled with hunger. Blister refused to inhale the oh-so-tempting buttered popcorn perfume lathering the air. Sniffing under the buttery pall, he detected the metallic balm of mustard and egg. On a nearby bench, a young fellow in a second-hand suit peeled the wax paper from a homemade egg salad sandwich. Blister was in the midst of devising a devious plan to adopt the sandwich when a plume of rats issued out of a storm drain beneath the platform. The street rat pack climbed up the short embankment of the platform and darted for the nearest departing train. The pack moved collectively, resembling a dirty carpet. Their pink tails trailed like fraying threads. This rat carpet leapt at the moving train. It tore apart as the rats flew in different directions, each one aiming for a different graspable target. In a whirl of smoke and steam, the train exited the station, with several cars barnacled with ratty lumps. In a very short span of time, Blister witnessed rug rats, bilge rats, and even pack rats swarm out of the different storm drains and board the different trains. The pack rats had the worst time boarding because they refused to discard their cumbersome bundles of oddment collections. The only rats he did not see escaping were operatives and wharf rats. Blister's loyalties to his tummy and his curiosity clashed. He wanted to eat, but he also wanted to find out what was driving nearly all the rats out of the city. The young fellow on the bench purchased one bite off the corner of his sandwich before he realized one of the trains pulling away from the platform was the very one he intended to board. He chucked the sandwich at the nearest rubbish bin, snatched up his portmanteau, and chased after the caboose, waving his ticket. The sandwich bounced off the rim of the bin. It plopped on the ground, held mostly intact by its wax paper wrapping. Blister dropped from his perch and seized it. He lopped off 3 or 4 monstrous bites, upon which he stuffed 3 or 4 more. The hard-boiled eggs were creamy. The hot mustard twanged his tongue. Crisp bits of onion crunched like soft glass. The sandwich was perfect. But before Blister swallowed, he sensed a slipperiness in his midsection. The all-too-familiar hunger racking up his ribcage had nothing to do with food. He had spent his whole life throwing food at this pang, as if it were a score he could settle once and for all. But his efforts amounted to throwing golf balls at a dartboard. Just then, a gaggle of bilge rats scurried by. Blister recognized them from the docks. The very rats that nearly cheated Muck in a fixed game of skulls and bones. Bile, their leader, ran at the rear of the pack, too big for nimble haste.
"Out of my way," he bellowed. "Them's trains is mine."
The rat pack trailed on the heels of the young man in the second-hand suit. When he sprang for the little porch on the back of the caboose, the bilge rats also sprang. Finding himself standing in a knot of panting rats, the young man eeped and hopped back onto the platform. He and Bile watched the train leave. Their shoulders sagged forward.
"Sorry, Bile,"
screeched one of the bilge rats.
"but it's survival of the fittest, not the fattest."
A very old woman, crushed in layers of taffeta, crooned at Bile.
"Poor little lost puppy."
She nearly scooped him up, but realized her mistake.
"Rat!"
The young man confirmed her assertion with another eep. He bolted, and the old lady hobbled away. Soon a shoe and bottle cascade bombed down on Bile, who darted over the edge of the platform. Blister waited for everyone's attention to funnel elsewhere before he too dropped over the edge of the platform. Bile had retreated through the grate chained over the storm drain tunnel. He crouched against the brick-lined wall, his back to Blister. Slipping through the bars with the remnants of the sandwich, Blister called,
"Hey, Bile,"
as if they were old pals. Bile jolted to his feet. He turned with a snarl, swiping his arms across his moist eyes.
"Don't comes no closer,"
he growled.
"or I'll tie your eyelids round your feet, I will."
Blister stopped on the spot. He spoke in as casual a tone as he could manage.
"Hey, calm down. No harm intended. I only wanted to know why all the rats are suddenly going on holiday."
"I ain't telling you nothing."
Bile locked his arms over his chest. All in an instant, Blister identified at least 10 ways he could get the information he wanted. He imagined a 1-for-1 and none-for-all split-flap board operating in his mind. Upon this board, his typical tactics and strategies flapped into position. Trickery, bribery, bargaining, fisticuffs. On the other side of the split-flap board, a second column of possible outcomes slapped into place. They included incidents like unwittingly helping Yana with her evil plot, selfishly caching food in the candle box, which then attracted the wharf rats, the double destruction of his precious home, losing the respect of Muck, Spindle, Seltzer, Horchata, even Rip, whose standards were admittedly low. Had the lifelong habits he formed under that protective motto actually delivered a life he enjoyed living? The answer stung. A new option clacked into view on the imaginary split-flap board, one he'd seen Muck carry out 1,000 times. Offer a gesture of kindness, completely free and unfettered from any sort of bargain, trade, or manipulation.
"Here."
He tossed the sandwich over to Bile. Rather than catch it, Bile let the food fall at his feet.
What's this for?"
"For you."
Bile swung his nose up.
"I don't want no bribes."
"Consider it a consolation prize."
Blister headed for the platform.
"Wait, you!"
Bile called. Blister waited. Bile snatched up the sandwich portion and stuffed it fully in his mouth. He spoke while chewing, launching little crumb comets.
"I ain't telling you this because you is giving me food what I never asked for. I is telling you this because you is clearly too stupid to know what's happened, which means you is probably smart enough to get caught in the mouth of danger."
The way he pronounced mouth made Blister grin.
"Oh, you is thinking it's funny to have a monster loose on the streets? A monster what's gone and gobbled up all them's creatures hiding in Madame Putresca's caverns. What's gobbled up Madame Putresca too, make no mistake."
A chill spiked the fur on Blister's back. He envisioned Rip streaking through the caverns at the mercy of his killer instincts.
"Gobbled up? What do you mean?"
"Gobbled up with fear, of course. What else would I mean? Madame Putresca has disappeared, or has runned away, retreated, abandoned ships, or has runned off with all them beasts what goes to her for help. Them's is gone."
Bile sucked the mustard off each claw to emphasize his last words.
Every last one.
She's gone?
Blister pulled his ears to his cheeks. At least Yana's ultimate goal, to capture and enslave the rescue network, was now utterly thwarted. But he knew neither where Putresca might go during an evacuation, nor when she would come back, if ever. She could just as easily re-establish her operations in any city. Why come back to Blackrust with a diabolical Yana on the loose? Imagining Muck in some secret, faraway place was worse than imagining him in Europe. Again, the split flatboard doled out a list of new tactics, including bravery, justice, and rescue. New outcomes cascaded down the other half of the board. Blister knew what he had to do. First, he would go to the caverns and search for some telltale clue that might reveal where Putresca had gone. If that failed, then he would go head-to-head with Yana and, who knew how, secure her imprisonment, either in jail or in an insane asylum. Bile finished polishing his paws and said,
Gone. That's right. And can you guess why? Can you guess what's done drove her out? What could possibly terrify the so-called great Madame Putresca?
Bile supplied the answer to his question before Blister could guess.
Them is saying some sort of she-devil done it. A wicked sorceress.
A sorceress?
Blister sniggered.
Let's not get carried away.
Bile flashed his sharpest teeth.
I is telling you what I heard, and I heard it were a wicked sorceress who cages up animals and puts lightning bolts in their heads. So it's every rat for hisself. Were I you?
But the advice never came, for the clatter and scrape of many paws echoed out of the dark end of the tunnel. Bile and Blister backed against the bricks to let a rat quartet race by.
Out of the way!
Scab shouted. Spit, Grime, and Gag screeched similar warnings. Snot was nowhere to be seen.
Scab? Is that you?
Blister called.
I guess I shouldn't be surprised to see you running away like a scaredy cat.
Scab slid to a stop. Grime, Gag, and Spit wrecked into one another in their jumbled attempts to avoid crashing into her.
Oh, it's only you, Blister,
she sneered.
You're one to talk. Why else would you be at the train station if not to run away? Me? Run away?
Blister scoffed. Ideas snapped together like magnets in his mind.
Far from it. I am here to recruit only the bravest and boldest of rats for a counter-rat attack against this so-called sorceress.
Scab snorted a laugh and encouraged the other rats to do the same.
Bravest? More like dumbest, she said.
Yeah, really dumb,
Grime added.
If Putresca can't best this sorceress, there's no way you can,
Spit concluded.
Not even if you had an army of giant bilge rats,
Gag said with a defiant nod at Bile. Blister expected Bile to threaten the little street rats, but instead, the behemoth stood stupefied, gawking at Scab, wide-eyed and twinkle-faced.
Oh, but this is no ordinary bilge rat, Blister said. Bile is the world's strongest rat. Show him your stuff.
Blister tugged Bile's muscular arm, which, at the moment, was a soggy noodle. Bile snapped out of his stupor. Stepping through the barred grate, he hoisted over his head a massive boot that had been hurled at him. Scab took her turn to gawk with wide and twinkling eyes.
Looks like he's stronger than you, Scab.
The taunt roused her.
Big deal,
She practically yawned. She grabbed Grime and Gag by their tails and wrenched them off the ground. They dangled like freshly caught fish as she hoisted them overhead.
Wow.
Bile exhaled. He dropped the boot and clutched the bars on the grate. With a tug, he bent them as if they were made of stiff taffy.
Gadzooks!
Scab dropped Grime and Gag on their heads. Spit laughed until his companions socked his sides.
We were just on our way out of this dung heap. Care to join us?
Scab batted her eyelids at Bile.
Don't mind if I does.
Bile offered the crook of his arm. Scab accepted, lacing her own through it.
Wait, wait, wait!
Blister blocked their path.
You can't go. There's no reason to run away. This city is not being terrorized by some sorceress. Just a scientist with an overactive imagination, a limping assistant, and a small band of high-heeled soldiers. I am certain that if we work together, we can wipe out this pesky little problem. And then everything will go back the way it was. Only better than before.
Why risk our necks? Scab shrugged.
Easier just to leave,
Bile said.
Easier, yes, but not wiser,
Blister urged.
Just stop and think for 1 second how your pack might grow when the news spreads. Scab and Bile defeat science sorceress.
Bile and Scab scoffed, then slipped between the bars on the grate. Grime, Gag, and Spit followed them. Blister rushed to the grate and gripped its bars as he shouted,
You want easy? Fine, go. Just remember, nothing worth doing is ever easy. Black Rust is our home, and home is where you make your dearest friends and collect your dearest memories. And protecting friends and memories may not be the only reasons you risk your own neck, but I say they're among the best reasons.
The coupled rats stopped. They traded silent looks.
Here's what I says.
Bile unwound his arm from Scab's. He stomped back to Blister and abruptly cuffed his paw around Blister's throat, plucking the rat like a flower.
Them's words cut straight through to me heart, them's did. Now if you doesn't have a plan what cuts half so well, I is afraid me and me friends is a-goin' to stomp your bones to chalk.
Blister croaked.
I have a plan.
I told you, Blister ditched his self-destructive motto. I bet you didn't believe me earlier when I said he would. But the math was simple. Count up the number of times one for one and none for all had robbed Blister of happiness. Then count up the number of problems facing Blister now. Divide those totals, multiply them by the square root of the, subtract. Definitely subtract from these figures. You know what? I'm a writer and should not be left unattended to do mathematics. Which just goes to show you, there are 3 kinds of people in the world. Those who can count and those who can't. Suffice it to say, we're gonna see an all-new Blister from here on out. Put on your math glasses because it's time to view the world with sharper division. My producers are warning me that all these math puns make you listeners feel numb. If I do one more, will you feel number? Tune in next time to find out if Blister actually does have a plan, what makes Bile happy. Can he and Scab actually work together? Will this motley rat crew reach Muck, Rip, and Spindle in time to save them from Dr. Van Sangfroid's diabolical dealings? In the meantime, stop by blisterandmuck.com and use the contact bubble to tell me what you think will happen next. Know any math jokes better or worse than this one? Why do plants hate math? Because it gives them square roots. You'll never miss an episode when you subscribe to the show directly at blisterandmuck.com. Subscribers get an email alert as soon as the newest episode releases. While you're at the website, I encourage you to please lend your support by making a donation or by selecting a cozy, colorful hat, shirt, or face mask from the Blister and Muck gift shop. A portion of your purchase helps cover the costs of web hosting, sound effects, and music licensing. And you'll find a special surprise from the entire Blister and Muck crew has been enclosed with your order. And if money is not a creature that typically roams around your home, you can definitely support the show by giving it some stars or a positive review on whatever app or platform you use to listen along. Reviews and likes help other listeners discover this madcap caper. Special thanks to Roland Rudzitis for serving up the Blister and Muck theme song. Additional music from Mon Plaisir and Kevin MacLeod. IDK Mr. Garcia shuffled the wood flaps. Noel Hananas clacked the gears. Dad SHB 1489 brought the birds. Train sounds from Daniel Simeon. All other sounds from the public domain. My gratitude multiplies for my family, friends, and fans. One for one, and all for you.